few months ago in a tech days, or it is a technical event of Accenture. So these are some of success stories of SharePoint implementation. I would like only to underline what Accenture has implemented is they are using SharePoint and they are accommodating 180,000 searchable employee profile, and their site has more or less their site has 1 million page views a month. So as huge as that the SharePoint is accommodating. The same thing for Energizer, the same thing for Infosys, and the same thing with Conservation International. If you are going to browse the Conservation International site, it is full of multimedia contents, videos, etc. And SharePoint is delivering its purpose fluently, notwithstanding of those huge file sizes that are loaded in the portal. Not to mention, of course, Ferrari. Ferrari is using SharePoint 2010. So, and some other successful implementations of SharePoint. Then what's next? Obviously, we have to start reading books in order for us to understand the product. Okay? We have to start reading books. We have to start opening the SharePoint, the official SharePoint site of Microsoft, and from that, we could have all the resources that we need to successfully implement the product. And I would like to underline only one thing that I have read. I forgot the name of the book. He started with few lines saying that, okay, SharePoint is a very powerful tool, but the success of SharePoint implementation depends on the level of our knowledge. So the more we understand the product, the better we could implement it. So again, the success, she said that no question, SharePoint is a very powerful tool. Walang question that it is really a very powerful tool. But again, she is saying that the success of implementing SharePoint in your company is dependent, or it is congruent with the knowledge level that we have on product. So it means that if we want to implement, or if we want to enjoy the benefit of implementing this powerful tool SharePoint, we need to start understanding what the product is offering us. Okay guys, so again, thank you very much, and we will now give the floor to our guest speaker. And let me introduce, I have prepared here one slide to introduce our speaker. Okay. So I'm so happy that Ken has accepted our invitation to deliver us at least a short talk on the product. So Ken is a CEO of Portal Integrators. So Portal Integrators is a consulting firm stationed in US, and they are focusing on SharePoint implementation. They are focusing of providing professional assistance on how to properly implement the product. Portal Integrators has their product like the human resource solution. So it is a ready-made software that you could easily deploy in your SharePoint portal to enjoy a human resource solution for your company. So Ken is an author of several books. He is an author of SharePoint 2010 Development for Dummies. This is a very nice book where Ken has redefined the meaning of SharePoint development for 2010. Ken is also an author of Microsoft Office 365 and Office 365 And the SharePoint Online I was mentioning is a part of Office 365. Then Ken has authored also Microsoft Business Intelligence for Dummies and SQL Server 2008 Reporting Services. And he authored also the SQL Server 2011 Reporting Services, and this is the reporting services of SQL Denali. So it is not yet in production, but Ken is already publishing a book on this. Okay, so we have now Ken to give his insight on SharePoint 2010. Ayan.
Everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. All right, so as Elzar mentioned, my name is Ken Withey. I'm the CEO of Portal Integrators. We're a software company based in Seattle, Washington. And I'm going to talk to you today about one of the books that I've written called SharePoint 2010 Development for Dummies. And what I'm going to talk about is a very high level how you can develop for SharePoint using tools, using the web browser, things like that. And you'll be able to have seen what Alan was presenting earlier on, giving the demo on how those work. So here's what I'll talk about. I'll give you a little bit about me and where I've come from and what I'm doing. Then I'll talk about the book and SharePoint 2010 development and the 3 ways you can develop using for SharePoint 2010, using the web browser, using some of the tools that come with SharePoint, and then also some of the programming for SharePoint. And then I'll talk a little bit at the end about Office 365 and SharePoint Online. All right, so I grew up in a place in California called Redding. It's similar to maybe Baguio here in the Philippines. Lots of mountains, lots of forests. I grew up climbing trees, stuff like that. Then I moved to San Francisco and went to college, and that's where I met my wife, Rosemary, in San Francisco. She's actually here tonight, back in the far corner, hiding. And when we came back to the Philippines and got married in 2002, and it was quite an experience. There were 330 people on her side, and I had 3 people fly over on my side. So then I went back we moved to San Francisco and finished our graduate school degrees, and then moved to Boston, and I started consulting with a company called Hitachi Consulting, and kind of fell into SharePoint. I was doing more general Microsoft consulting, and SharePoint just started taking off. So I kind of fell into it and then started publishing books and kind of went from there. While I was consulting at Hitachi, I was traveling every week all around the country to different cities, and Rosemary would fly out with me, and we got to see most of the states. We saw everything from big cities to the rural parts, and one of the places I worked was at Microsoft in Seattle working on a project, and in our opinion that was the best place to live, so we moved from Boston to Seattle, and that's where we currently live today. And just to give you some kind of a reference, riding up here in no man's land, San Francisco, back and forth all across the country there. And then last year, so I've been consulting for years and years, and then last year I formed a company called Portal Integrators. And we do SharePoint implementations, we do SharePoint consulting, but the idea right now is that people have been asking for the same things over and over. They've been coming to me and saying, can you help us build a human resources solution in SharePoint? And we can do that, we definitely do that. I've done that many times over and over, but it costs a lot of money. Consulting is really expensive, paying per hour, so I thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to start packaging these up and selling it as a finished goods product. And we have an office here in the Philippines and also in Seattle. I've written a number of books, as Elzar mentioned. The first book was the Reporting Services book, and then I wrote the Business Intelligence for Dummies book, and then the SharePoint 2010 Development for Dummies, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm actually in the process. We're about 3/4 of the way through writing Office 365 and SQL Server 2011. The SQL Server 2011 is just coming out of the community technology release. Well, let's talk a little bit about SharePoint development, and just to make sure we're all on the same page. So Alan asked earlier if there were any programmers. How many people use SharePoint, or their companies use SharePoint where you work? Does anybody?